Welcome back to the Real News Network. I'm Sharmini Perez coming to you from Baltimore. I'm in conversation with Professor Vicente Navarro about Podemos in Spain and how it rose to power. In our first segment, we talked about Podemos and the conditions that led to its rise. And in this segment, we're going to deal with the economic underlying issues that led to the rise of Podemos, and as well as who is Podemos, what its leadership looks like. Thank you again for joining me.
Delighted to be here.
So again, Vicente Navarro is Professor of Public Policy at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore and of the Pompeu Fabra University in Barcelona, Spain. He is Director of the Johns Hopkins University of Pompeu Fabra University's Public Policy Center, and also that is located in Barcelona. He's the author of the Spanish bestseller, Hey Alternativas. Thank you again for joining us. So, let's, in this segment, try to tackle, first I want to tackle who is Podemos, how did the leadership form, the decision to form a party, all came out of Indignados movement. So let's begin there.
Well, the Indignados movement, as I mentioned before, was clearly committed to a democratic change. Democracy understood not only informal representative democracy, which was very limited in Spain, but also in terms of direct forms of democracy, which is practically unknown in Spain. And that is where the demand for a political instrument that could be the channeling that movement was critical. It started as a group of young political scientists, Pablo Iglesias, Juan Carlos Monedero, several. Some of them I knew them because I'm part political scientist.
Now, Carlos Monedero actually comes from having been a part of the movement in Venezuela.
Well, many of them have been advisors to Latin American countries. Actually, the majority of the core of this group coming from the Complutense University, which is the largest public university in Spain. They were involved as consultants to the Chavez government, to the Correa government, Ecuador, and others. So they were, in that sense, politically sympathetic to what was happening in Latin America after the neoliberal decade. It was a disaster. Then these parties of the left or left of center appear. And many intellectuals in Spain, you know, Spain has very close links with Latin America, and were involved in terms of analyzing, studying it, consulting. And this group is how it came up. But what happened in Spain was independent of that situation because many other people came from other sources. Actually, the majority of them came from the youth of the branch of the Communist Party. The Communist Party in Spain had a clear democratic credentials because they were the leading force calling for democracy during the anti-fascist period. There are also other parties, including the Socialist Party. But in that respect, the Communist Party was the major force in the anti-fascist tradition. And many of these people came from the youth of the sometimes disenchanted with some of the modus operandi of the Communist Party, not always as sensitive to the direct form of democracy as, in my opinion, they should be. But anyway, in that respect, that was a very important movement, but the country was so ready that in just 1 year became the major force in the country. Some of us predicted, because you could detect at the still level there was an enormous anger, frustration. The governments were imposing policies no one had called for, they had popular mandate, and that is why a group of people with a commitment, clear-minded where to go, and immediately came up. And now these are great challenges because sadly the majority of people could put them into power, and there is not the infrastructure in terms of that. But they are doing it.
But there is some building blocks here.
Right.
There is councils,
Right.
democratic participatory
Right.
discussions
Right.
going on. There is a lot of material
Right.
being generated to educate the public along the way.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because the part of this insufficiency of the Spanish democracy come of that transition, where the right wing was very powerful. The political parties themselves were not very democratic. They were controlled by an elite leadership who stayed there forever. That is why Podemos denounced that a caste is something similar in the United States. We have a political class that are there forever. Well, in Spain that was not acceptable. So in that respect, that was the expression of la casta, which then was expanded to the media. You also have the same casta controlling the media. You have the same casta controlling banking. You have the casta controlling the country. It used to be called dominant class or whatever, but the casta people related very quickly. Because it was obvious that they were the same. And in that sense, that is why the message became very popular. They are very young, but it would be a mistake to believe that they're only young people.
Because they're obviously calling on people like yourself to advise them and help them develop their political and economic platforms.
Right. Young emotionally in the spirit, but not biologically, 80 years. But they call on us, they call on Villarejo, a member who used to be a member of the Supreme Court, fiscal of the General Secretary, who was one of the founders. They asked me to help them with Juan Torres and other economists well known in Spain to help them in developing the economic program. So, and if you look at their demonstrations, you see our people from all different ages. The leadership are young biologically as well, as it should be. They have the energy to move on. But the majority of the popular classes, I mean the working class, middle, low income, middle class, you see people in all their demonstrations, and millions of people in the street. That is very impressive. And the strength came from their numbers. And that
now this is a highly economically and politically literate society. And so in terms of what Podemos put on their political platform and the economic plans that they are deriving in discussion is going to have to be pretty sound. So what is it you are advising? You had helped Podemos develop their political platform.
Yes, economic and social platform primarily. One of them is to redefine the meaning of democracy. Democracy has to take place also at the place of work. Democracy has to also mean a redistribution of resources. We cannot have democracy when we have such dramatic inequalities. Spain is the second country up to the United States in terms of concentration on wealth and income. You cannot have a democracy in a system which there is such a huge concentration, income and wealth. So that is why our motto is...
And this was clear to the people, the economic inequality. Of course, day to day they were realizing it because of the unemployment lines, the cut in pensions and inadequate housing and all of that. So in terms of this translating into economic inequality and the gap growing bigger and bigger, long before Piketty came out with his book, the people knew.
Well, at least we wrote the program before he wrote the book. But no, because it's obvious in that sense. In the program, we have written a document that Podemos has widely distributed. The data is absolutely clear. If you see the income derived from labor has been declining, which has created the crisis, by the way, because that means loading of demand, and therefore the economic stimulus. Meanwhile, the income derived from capital has been going up and up. And it's not by coincidence. One is going up because the other goes down. So that is very clear. So any economic policy committed to democracy has to reverse that. So we cannot have democracy with such a concentration of capital. That was a critical element because in our analysis of the crisis, Juan Torres and I indicated that the roots of the crisis is the inequalities. And because labor has been weakened deliberately. So all these policies In that respect, I must say, sometimes there is no overabundance of economic debate. Yeah. It's a political debate. Yeah. I think that is where there has been an attack against labor. And even the creation of the euro, which is what we came up in the book, is that the euro was established precisely to break with the social model in Europe. And in that sense, that is the major point we make, that the redistribution plays a critical role, and democracy cannot be understood without redefining the relations of property and income within a country. And people are very amenable to this, and of course the leadership is quite in agreement. So that is, in that sense, is where major focus on that. Equality in terms of class, which is important to recover the concept of class, but also in terms of gender. I think that it's terribly important to help women to get into labor force. That is another element we emphasize, which requires a whole set of infrastructures in terms of childcare services, home care services, and it changed the revolution in the way how men think about it. Mm-hmm. So that is another element. Another element is a revolution in the ecological sense, that we have to redefine the meaning of consumption and production. Mm-hmm. And that these were some of the major elements. At the steel level, very popular. At the structural, power-based structure, enormous hostility. We have received enormous hostility. I have lived in many countries, and I have never received so much hostility. But not only from Spain. When we published our program, none other than the president of the German National Bank, Central Bank, the Bundesbank, said that we are going to destroy Europe. And he's right. We destroy their Europe. This is our intention.
We
want to save Europe. We want to save the popular Europe. Yeah. They want to recover social Europe. Yeah. In that sense, but it's quite remarkable. The whole president of Bundesbank appears the next day, appearing in our document, saying that document is going to ruin Europe.
I don't understand the super hyper capitalists that shoot themselves in the foot by attacking labor. Now, it's very obvious in any equation that if you reduce purchasing power of your population, that you're going to somehow, at the end of the day, eventually, attack your own economy. This doesn't seem to resonate with that class.
Well, because it has to do with the changes within the dominant class. I think today the dominant group is financial capital, is banking. Mm-hmm. And in that respect, the primary enemy is inflation. And they will go to great length to stop inflation. And the European Central Bank is not a bank, it's not a central bank, it's a lobby of banking. Mm-hmm. That is an extremely important thing to be realized in this country. Mm-hmm. The Federal Reserve Board, with all its problems, which has many, has as an objective control inflation, but also stimulate the economy and create employment. That is not an objective in the European Central Bank. And the European Central Bank was designed in such a way that the states are not protected in front of the speculation from the financial markets. So what does European Central Bank does? Prints money. All banks do it, central banks do it. But with that money, they do not buy, until very recently, the public bonds, which help the states to protect themselves against the speculation of financial markets. So the states are completely unprotected. So the European Central Bank prints money, lends it to a ridiculous interest, very low, to the private banks. And the private banks then buy public bonds at the interest 6, 7, 12%. Listen, it's a fantastic business for private banks. And the roots of the problem of the growth of public debt is this, is the design how the euro was established and how the European Central Bank operates. And that is why we say the European Central Bank has to change dramatically, not only in terms of objectives, but the control of that. Today, the European Central Bank is either controlled and under enormous heavy influence of the German Central Bank. And that is not good. As a matter of fact, it's not good, even as you said, for the business, non-financial sector of the economy. But that is what we are happening in Spain. So European Central Bank is very much part of the problem. And in our program, we denounce that situation. And that we say, they are ruining Europe, even economically. I think that, having said that, banking has never had a better situation. In Spain, banking is extremely profitable, but they have lost the function of banking, which is offer credit. They do not offer credit. The European Central Bank has spent billions and billions and billions of dollars, has produced and give it to the private banks, but that has not filtered down as a credit. So does not offer credit. What it does, speculate. So today, European economy is based on a speculation because banking controls the financial system. And that is the root of the problem.
And they create bubbles, then later we have to pay for.
Exactly.
So in our next segment, we are going to talk about how Podemos can fuel more Podemos across European countries like that of Syriza in Greece. And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.